Welcome to the Diversity Pivot Podcast. I'm your host, Julie Kratz, and this season we will be unpacking real trends, hot topics in the workplace around allyship and inclusion. Our goal is that each week you leave with tangible tools, information, practical strategies that you can take back to allies at your organization. Let's dig in to this week's topic. Hey, listeners, I have a special guest this week, Najauna White, and she is a vibrant force in the travel and tourism sector with a flair for sparking change and building bridges. She's been in hospitality and tourism, championing diversity and inclusion at every turn, and is the current Vice President of DEI at Miles Partnership. She's a trailblazer rolling out impactful DEI initiatives, educational programs, and staff engagement strategies, which we have had a chance to partner with her on, which is very cool. She's all about community transformation and collaboration and wants to celebrate and amplify diverse voices. I can speak for Najauna's definite skill set at building meaningful connections and nurturing stories that resonate and inspire. Welcome to the show, Najauna.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
I'm excited too. We've known each other for years now and had a chance to partner on some training and development for your team. So it's always good to be with a thought partner that just really gets it and is doing the work, like
Yes,
doing the work for real and for the real reasons
for
nowadays.
real is the part. So that's the part that people forget. This is real stuff and real work.
It is. Yeah. Well, tell us, how did you find your way into the inclusion space?
Yeah. I think this is an interesting question because I had this conversation with my dad like 2 days ago. And so my kind of journey in DEI, I think was almost natural. I think sometimes when you ask people about like their career journeys and where they end up, they always kind of lend at like their first job or that first like spark at a conference where they had that aha moment and they were like, I'm gonna go into this industry. But for me, I think it was more on the personal side. So I am from place in Boston, Dorchester, Roxbury, that is 50 to 60% Black. I was bused into a neighborhood to go to school that was 2% Black. And so by design and how, I think I went through my early years in school, I was kind of almost forced into a situation where I had to learn the art of code switching. I had to learn how to assimilate to a culture. I had to learn of like a little bit of like where I was in this sea of people that I
Mhm.
never really interacted in that capacity with before. And so for me, my DEI journey started fairly early. I can remember going into the sixth grade, going from a school that it was all mostly Black and brown kids, 80 to 90% Black and brown kids, then going to a school where I am one or two Black children, no brown kids in that class sitting in a room. And
That had
so
to have been
I,
wild.
it wild, and it's like I had to learn at a young age of what safety looks like for me in that environment, what advocacy looks like, who are I think the people that I can go to in the school system, in the neighborhood, all of these things that I can use to help me through my journey. And so I would say like DEI for me started there. I was a young activist in school. I was, out there lobbying, talking about equal education, what that looks like. Worked early in the nonprofit system, did all of those things. And so I think I actually lost a little bit of that in my corporate journey because I didn't know that diversity, equity, inclusion, that could be a thing. I
Yeah,
think
it
when
wasn't a career path back
it wasn't a
then. Like,
career path, and if it was, no one came to career day and talked about it. It wasn't like this is what I do for X company. It was just like, hey, I'm coming, to you as a Black woman in corporate, and I am making sure that there are other people who get hired at this company. Yeah, well, at the time, I didn't know that that was equitable talent acquisition. I didn't know that someone was looking at their HR systems and their processes to make sure that they're hiring and sustaining diverse talent. So I think I lost a little bit of that along the way, but in the back of my mind, I always wanted to still do this work. So every space that I've been in, especially in hospitality and tourism, started in the restaurant industry, went to an event management firm, worked at a local convention and visitors bureau, now having the opportunity to be at a creative marketing agency on the tourism side. I have had the ability to say, I want to infuse all of those things, the learning how to code switch, the assimilation, the learning to advocate for myself. I want to kind of flip that around and do it in a different way that allows me the space to be collaborative, that allows me the space to really lean into strategies and implementation of this work.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's so cool how things go full circle and the collection of that experiences shows up
Yes.
from the little child you were on the school bus to working in all of these different industries, how it
Yeah.
helps you lead inclusion now. And now is not, we've seen the wild ride of DEI, right? So now is seeing some backlash or backtracking, but I know having worked with you and your team, that's very much not the case. And I'm just
Yeah.
curious, like, what has led to the sustainability of DEI work at Miles?
I think that Miles is, even when I talk about this, like on my own social channels, and people always say, like, I cannot believe your company is letting you talk about these things. And I think the advantage of Miles is that they're not letting anyone do anything. They are hiring people to support and grow a culture of us having our own voices. And so I think by the dynamics of us being a creative marketing agency, you have to have diversity of thought. You have to have diversity of ideas. You have to have diversity of experiences there. I think the other advantage of Miles is we like to do good work. We want to make sure that we, at the end of the day, when we have to submit awards or have to clients, we want it to be engaging. We want it to be fun. We want it to be provocative. We want it to be all of these things. And so I think that DEI is able to sustain here of not only because of that, but it also comes from initiatives from our CEO. And so, DEI at Miles was started as a task force from our CEO in 2020. And so, him being a white man, said, you know what, this is something that I want to do. And because he started it and said, how do I grow this at my organization? We've been able to grow a team. I think the other thing is the industry by the dynamics of all of us, or the people that can have, want to travel, it has to be diverse. Travel has to be equitable. You have to be able to create experiences for me if I am able-bodied, if I'm not. You have to be able to have a shared experience for me if I am, someone who is low income in travel or if I'm a luxury traveler, right? You have to be able to have an experience for me if I am someone that's traveling with my wife or with my husband, whatever that looks like. And so I think that while there are so many things that are happening of anti-DEI legislation and all the policies, and this is an election year, we still have to make sure that travelers and the people who live in those states are having experiences that they could identify with. So that's why I think it sustains at Miles because it goes beyond just checking the box for us. This is like we have to live and breathe this because we know what it's like to have an experience in a new place for me, for someone else.
Yeah. Well, two things you underscored there. One, CEO support, which was a
Yeah.
lot more popular in 2020 than 2024, which is interesting. I just want to go back and be like, hey, you remember what you
Yeah.
said? I see this
Remember that
quote.
commitment? Yeah.
Mm. But in all seriousness, for a CEO to stay committed nowadays, especially a white man, that's courage. It's taking some courage to stand up to the naysayers and to risk some of that political backlash that sadly they've been targeted. So that is important. I was just meeting with a group and they said our number one problem is our senior leaders think DEI is someone else's job, and it can't be someone else's job. And if they're not on board, no one else is going to be on board.
Yeah.
So that C-suite support is so important. And Two, I think knowing is necessity in our industry and the business impact and the cost of not doing inclusion, like you said, like you're going to alienate key demographics that are happen to
Oh,
be
that's
growing in our
cool.
country.
Yeah, I think, people don't understand like the ROI of DEI. I
Mhm.
think, and, to make a comment to what, some of those people said that you mentioned before, is that the ROI of DEI is someone else's job in the start. The reason being is because DEI is a strategy, right? The things that come after it is the action. That's what everybody has to uphold. But for example, if you start something as a CEO, as a CFO, CMO, whatever you are in the C-suite, and you're just saying, I want to get it started, you do in fact have other duties in that organization. So there has to be someone to make sure of what you started is carried out. And so I think that's always like controversial because you do have some people that say, like, my C-suite, they don't care about DEI. So we can't do anything. You got to make them care. You have to show them. Like, I say this all the time of like, I remember when I was at my local convention and visitors bureau, which are marketing agencies for cities. So every city kind of has their own smaller marketing agency. And for years, I had multicultural tourism as a market segment. So I was like, we should start a DEI division. Like, I just knew that was it. And I remember having all of these internal conversations around like, ways that I can wiggle inclusion into the conversation, that I can talk about some of these things that I had and some of these ideas. And I went to a mentor of mine, and at the time, he said, they have to see that what you're talking about makes dollars and makes sense. Because right now, you're trying to get people to do it for the moral reasons, and nobody cares about that but you. So you have to make them care. So I remember going into our system, we had a CRM at the time that we can look at all of our accounts back, I don't know how many years. And I went up any group that had a multicultural tag. What time did they come? What were their meeting patterns? What were their dates? And I looked at the economic impact of those groups coming to our city. When I did that, then I compared to here are the times when we weren't paying attention to multicultural tourism, where you didn't have a someone focused on that nationally. And I looked at the numbers. You can clearly see that the groups that are diverse are that are coming here are making money for the city. So that's always interesting because I think that you have to have your CEO has to empower people to want to do the work. You have to have that buy-in. You have to have that endorsement from your C-suite. But sometimes it is someone else's job because if you leave it up to the CEO, especially in a large organization, it's not going to get done. And then when
No,
you got to
no, that's a
support
great
people
point.
like, we don't care about it. Well, somebody else has to care about it too. Y'all got to
The
get
plate's
all the
kind of
people that care
full.
about it together. Yeah.
And the support, right? The empowerment, the delegation, finding good quality people and not trimming that department and budget when things
Yes.
get wishy-washy. But I love that story about like before and after. What's the impact that we created? And it's dollars and cents.
Dollars
Is
and
really
cents.
good. Yeah, because I think us practitioners would be like, of course, this is the right thing to do. Like, why wouldn't you want all humans to feel included in the workplace? But
Yeah.
C-suite's like they're responsible for quarterly returns and
Exactly.
shareholders'
Exactly.
expectations
They're
and
having meetings
it-
with the bank, they're having meetings with
yeah,
their investors, with their
right.
board. And for you to kind of go in there and say, hey, we want to take the other part of that is like you have to have some type of financial investment to DEI. I
Right.
do believe that that's true. So, in order for someone to go that is in your C-suite and they're saying, hey, we want to invest whatever it is, $100,000 in our DEI efforts this year for our marketing campaigns, for our sustainability, for accessibility, making sure our website is optimized, whatever that is. And if they say, why? And you're like, because we love each other. Hell no, that does not work. So you need to say why is because we tested our digital, we tested our website against this WCAG and we noticed that Someone can't read our website with screen readers. We noticed that we show up X on this scale. If we graded our sustainability efforts and compare it to the national average, our organization would get a D. Are we a D organization? Let them answer that question. If the answer is no, how can we move from a D to a B? How can
Mhm.
we make sure that we have sustainable practices in the organization? How can we make sure what we're doing is equitable? What does our handbook say? What are the
Right.
things? And so I think that that's the part that people forget is that when you have meetings, it's not just a justified conversation between you and the C-suite.
Mhm.
And this is something we talk to our clients about all the time of that, when you are doing implementing DEI strategy, you have to look at what are your goals. And so if you're just saying, we want to make sure our website is more diverse, why? We want to make sure that we have diverse partnerships. Why? We want to do equity research on our community. For what? And so at the end of the day, when we get down to it, it's like, oh, your goal is to increase year over year visitation for diverse audiences and increase that by
Yeah.
30% in 2026. That makes sense. That is something that we have a metrics and we can build to. But the whole idea of like, well, we just want to show people that they can travel here as a family. I can travel right to my living room for free. So that is that's not gonna cut it. And so I think that's one of the things that we have to do with all of this DEI backlash is that we still have to put the ROI behind it, but we also have to put some elements else behind DEI that make it look a little bit sexy for people to want to implement.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Well, and I know one of the initiatives that you've had a lot of success with is engaging middle management at the
Yeah,
firm. And we know with middle management that that education gap, that lived experience gap, that backlash trigger can hit a little harder. Um, I've been doing this 10 years, and I have done very few middle manager development programs like the one we did and partnered with you on. I'm curious how you were able to garner that level of support because that was a lot of time. Not you
yeah,
and I know that wasn't a lot of time,
yes,
but for them, it's a lot of
yeah,
time I could be answering emails and
yeah.
doing other stuff that
Surveys
gets
and yes.
business
Oh,
done. So
yes.
how do you get the buy-in for a program like that?
Yeah, in the its most simplest form is that we decided to do an organizational assessment and survey. We do one every year. And in that survey, we ask everyone across the board how they feel about their education, their personal development, even outside of DEI, but where they just have interests. And we leave all of our questions open for comments. What do you need to tell us? What should we know? And so when we looked at our cultural assessment, our organizational survey year over year from 21 to 22 to 23, what stuck out is that there was this gap in middle management or supervisors who wanted some education around topics into how to manage their teams, how to work more efficient, also how to build relationships, especially in this virtual landscape. And so we said, well, how do we take that need and then make sure that DEI is fully integrated into that need? One of the unique things that we did as well is that when we looked at our organization demographics, I think a lot of companies don't do this and this is tough for them, but you have to be honest about who you are and what you look like. And so what we said was, okay, we want to host education. We want to develop some professional development for everyone or create some professional development for everyone. But we want to make sure, one, that they can identify with the facilitator. We want to
Mhm.
make sure that there's a level of psychological safety for our supervisors. And when we looked at the list, the majority of our supervisors were white. And so while we are working towards changing that demographic, when you are looking at changing demographics in an organization, that is not 1, 2, or 3 years. You're looking at a 5, 10 year stretch of trying to actively change your talent acquisition pipeline, how you source, and how you sustain diverse talent. So when we took that survey, and you know this, every call I get on, we always lean back into that survey. We are doing this because we see it right here. This is what you said. We are doing this because we are doing this to help. We are doing this to support. We
Yep.
are engaging you in this way. And so once you do that, then you get people to say, okay, you know what? Even if they were not the ones to say that they want this education, 50, 60 other people do. So maybe this is important. And then the other part of that is that we shared with our supervisors how people who were not in those positions felt about their leadership abilities. And so we shared with them the things that were successful and then the things that we needed to have work on. And a lot of the training that we did with you all was along those lines. So we needed to talk about, microaggressions. We needed to talk about unconscious bias. We needed to talk about ways that you can manage in times of uncertainty. Like we needed to talk about all of these things because even as a manager, if you think I got this in the bag, I'm good. I don't need any help. You do. Because
That's
there's
probably the person that needs the most help.
exactly, exactly. There's probably someone on your team who is like, I don't think you got it, Julie. And so we wanted to make sure, and that's how we got the buy-in by showing them the data. And I think that's the part in DEI that some people skip over is that you have to show the data and to say, this is why we need to do the work, just so you have a benchmark. So, after, we finished our last session with you, we went ahead and we pushed to get survey responses. What we do is we take the education that we did in 2021, we take 22, we take 23, we take 24, and we align all those data and insights. Now we've had a beta year and we've had years after that that we can test how has our language and knowledge around DEI changed? How has our relationships changed? Each organization, when you do a survey, has a net promoter score. This is a score that tells you how many people within your organization are advocates for promoting your organization to talent out there and into the world, right? Has that grown? Has it decreased? Has it stayed the same? And so these are all things of we use to get buy-in. And for Miles, because we are, again, a marketing agency that really leans on data and innovation, none of our, two campaigns are alike. And so because we use that for our clients, it's also amazingly beneficial to use it for our team.
Right. Oh, I love that so much. Listeners, if you're taking notes, you have a notebook filled. 'Cause it's like, I love this tie it back to the why, the why,
Yeah.
the why, data,
Yeah.
data. And it makes it so hard for someone to run away from the work when you emphasize the reason we started doing this and you have data to tell the story. It becomes less about my personal beliefs and religion and politics and all the shenanigans that you and I know the work is not. It's meant to be impacting the business because it impacts the humans that do the work to create the business impact.
Yep.
So really great, really great. And I know our team was thankful to be trusted. And I think one thing you did really well too is pivoting. Hey, we got feedback on this session. They like this format and not this format. Let's pivot. And we tried different things and told them every
Yeah.
time we're trying this because you told us you wanted us to try this.
Hold on. Yeah,
People
we
feel
listen.
engaged. They
Yes.
feel bought in. If you could wave the magic wand, Lashana, and like one takeaway, one thing you'd want listeners to know that maybe they haven't thought of, or maybe something that you wish people talked about more in the DEI space, what would it be?
Ooh, I think that if I could get like one takeaway, what I want them to talk about a little bit more is I think that people oftentimes have to lean into the things that for so long they've hid from like their organizations. You have to lean into a little bit of your discomfort, but a little bit of your superpower.
Mhm.
Off camera, we were talking a little bit about my journey in the school system, or maybe that was on camera, but we talked about that. And one of the things that I realized as a Black woman in corporate America is oftentimes organizations are intimidated by my ambition. They are intimidated by the way I build relationships. The fact that like I can get on conversations like
Who
this.
is she to think that
Yeah,
she
like
could do
who is
this?
she to be having a
Yeah.
conversation? I'm me, baby. So I think that like that's intimidating oftentimes because you are hiring someone for a role and then you realize that like, oh, they are doing everything. They're doing their role, but they're doing everything as well. And so I think that what's important is to lean into that. So I took a gap for a while where like I wanted to disengage from previous organizations. Like I didn't want to participate in staff meetings. I didn't want to participate in, volunteering or whatever I did
Mm.
because that part of me felt stifled. But knowing that I grew up in a neighborhood in Boston that was 60% Black, bused into a school that was 2% Black, there are skills that I've learned. I can see microaggressions from a mile away. I can smell them coming into the room. I can be in a conversation with my friends and someone walk in, and my ability to code switch is so great that everyone is like, what just happened? Don't worry. You got to keep up. You got to keep up. And so, like,
I know how to play this part. Yeah.
yeah, and I had that ability. And for a while, I hid that because I thought it was a problem for me and for my organization. And so I think the takeaway is like lean into some of those things and figure out how those identities help you grow, how those identities help you succeed in a space. And do it if you have capacity. I think oftentimes when you are the only, and I don't mean just like the only person of color, but you can be the only advocate, right? The only ally, the only person to say, this isn't right. The only person to say, I don't want to do this, or I do want to do this. I think oftentimes when you are the only, you say, I can put this on my back and I can take this on myself. You don't need to do that, but you do need to lean in a little bit to the things that are your superpower and that are a little bit uncomfortable and figure out how you can turn those into successes for yourself.
Mm. I love that. Like, don't do it afraid. Like, lean into
Yeah.
the conversation we don't want to be having, and don't underestimate your superpowers. Yeah, I've seen you in action before, Najana. I know what, and it's like people don't even know what hit them. Like, what? How'd
Well,
this
I think that
happen?
we all like have that, right? I think that I one of the things that I took me a while to get to, but now I do it all the time is it took me a while to like ask for help and ask for a
Yeah.
mentor and find a mentor. And so, and it was with anything. And I think because it's intimidating, right? And so
Mm.
sometimes you see people and you see them on social and they have thousands of thousands of thousands of followers. Like you, Julie, you have like what, 40,000 followers on LinkedIn, right? And so when you are reaching out to someone, that is intimidating. And so it's hard to say, like, hey, I'm in this new space and I need help. Do you have advice? Because sometimes when that advice comes back, it's like, yeah, hey, book my link, and advice is $100 an hour. If you are not in the space to do that, then you feel like,
Mm.
damn, well, I can't get the advice. And so
Right.
I've had my own like wins and losses in that space.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that has helped me and like be this person of action is having a mentor that one, I can either be a sounding board and can say, yeah, let's cut that out. So my husband does that sometimes. Like I have a story in mind. He's like, you don't need to say that. Like save that for something else, right? So sometimes you need that sounding board. And then sometimes you need to see someone else that is in another space than you and how they've navigated through to help you. And so
Yeah.
those are things that I've learned along the way that I've seen people on calls. Our chief diversity officer at Miles, Melissa Cherry, she's been in the industry, 20, 25 years, maybe longer. And I've been on calls with her where someone, a client, is going off the deep end on why they don't want to do the importance, and the way that she's able to command them, bring them back to the conversation, and get them to realign to strategy is like mind blowing. There's so many times where I text her after and I'm like, when you get a second after I have this glass of wine, we have to talk because that was good. And I've seen that, virtually. I've
Yeah.
seen it in person. And then when people meet her, sometimes they're like, is Melissa here? And I'm like, yeah, she's right here. And they're like, I thought Melissa was like 6 feet tall. I'm like, no, she's like 5'2", right? But she has such an amazing commanding presence.
Yeah.
Her her communication and marketing skills and strategy skills are like out of this world. But then she can also help our team, like mentor our team, do the things that we need to do to make sure Miles is successful and our clients are successful. So I think, I know I mentioned the takeaway already, but maybe my takeaway is like get a mentor, ask questions, and figure out what you need to do to get you to the next step. Get help.
Yeah. Well, and
Yeah.
that's the thing. I find it so, this is me too. Like I was raised by, a single mom that was like, don't ask for help. Like the
Yeah.
world could be crumbling. That's like the worst thing you could do, And
Yeah.
it wasn't like she said
Not
it like
ask
that,
for
but it
help.
felt like that.
Yeah.
And so then teaching allyship, I'm like, you all ask for help, but not me.
And you're asking me for help. So yeah, what do I need to do?
Right.
Yeah.
But it also underscores, the research we know, women of color, like
Yeah.
10% have mentors and sponsors. So I would
Yeah.
add to what you said and be a mentor, a sponsor to somebody that's different from you.
Yeah.
For sure. It's a two-way street, but also seek out mentors that are different from you. And
Yeah.
it's so great you have a Melissa to learn from. I
Yeah.
think about leaders we can learn from. We need to be in their proxies for us to continue to grow and help others too.
Yeah. I agree.
Well, it's been so fun to talk with you, Najana.
Good
It's great
time.
we get to work together. So I know this conversation
Yes.
will continue, but tell our listeners if there's, places to follow you and support
Yes.
you.
Yes. Absolutely. My platforms of choice to just talk and express all these things DEI is first LinkedIn. So it's LinkedIn / my name, Najauna White. And then my second choice is Instagram, which is a little bit more fun. So that's a expression into like when I actually get to travel and do all the fun things for some of these conferences and clients, I put all of that stuff on Instagram. And so that is at Najana Brene. But most importantly, like visit our website at Miles. And so, yes, we have a DEI team that does great work, but we also have a full service creative marketing agency that does amazing work, amazing campaigns. We have a team of almost 400 people now that are really dedicated to um, creating campaigns and experiences for travelers and communities that they're in. So head to our website, head to my LinkedIn, all the different things. Julie, thank you so much. I feel like we always have great conversation on camera and off camera. So thank you so much for asking me to chat with you today and do this.
Thank you for listening to the Diversity Pivot podcast. My hope is that you walked away with a tangible tool, insight, or information that you can share with other allies on the journey. If you liked this week's episode, please leave us a review. Your feedback means a tremendous amount to us. We'll be back next week with another hot topic.
This with you.